Okay, so we're going to begin today's class. We're going to pick up from where we left off the last class. And just by the way, I just remembered I haven't uploaded last week's lectures. And so I'll be doing that uh, later uh, and uploading this one along with them. Right, so all three of them will be coming together. And update you when that's done. Also, for Friday's class, there are only four of you, and right, two of you voted in favor of having the day off. So I guess we'll go with that. Who else do we have? We've got On joining us. Okay, welcome to class, On. Now, what we were talking about were the punctuations, right? And again, the reason we're doing this is you know your punctuations, and so you can use them properly and improve your quality, because having proper punctuations is obviously one of the criteria Cambridge has for judging your writing. So these are the 16 punctuations. We're only interested up till the ellipsis, right, which is punctuation number 13, maybe 14, not so much for 15 and 16, right, the square brackets and the curly brackets. The last class we talked about the full stop, which is pretty straightforward, and yet for some reason students nowadays don't know how to use it. Then there's the question mark, the exclamation mark, and the comma, and we had to leave, you know, the comma incomplete. So we're going to continue from there. And one of the uses of the comma is to separate additional information that has been given in the sentence. So an example for this, alaikum assalam. Okay, so an example for separating additional information is okay. So the new teacher, although experienced, was struggling with the class, right? And so the additional information over here is what I've written down as although experienced. If you remove that, you still have the sentence, the new teacher was struggling with the class. Right. And so what I've done is I've added some additional information over here, and I've separated using commas, and I've given some information about the teacher that the teacher was experienced. Okay. So separating additional information using commas is something you can do. Then is, right, you use a comma with speech verbs when you're doing direct speech. So, for example, he inquired, comma, right, when do registrations close? Right, he inquired, comma, when do registrations close? So you can use that with a speech verb. And lastly, right, with the salutation and the signing off of a letter. So for salutation, you have dear sir or a name or whatever, and you're putting a comma over there. And for signing off, you have yours, and this is the capital Y and an S without the apostrophe. Right? Yours faithfully and a comma, so that comes at the end. Okay, so that's all about the comma. Any questions you can just put in the chat, or you can ask, unmute yourself and ask. That's fine as well. Next in the list is the colon. Okay. Just a minute. So it can be used to introduce a list. An example for that would be all right, so probably something a student is doing in their A levels. All right, they decide to take 4 subjects, and obviously what we're concerned with over here is the colon, which is giving the list. We've already talked about the comma, which is separating items in the list, right? And so you're doing psychology, sociology, law, and business studies. What else can you do with a colon? Right? You can, for example, clarify some information. All right, so I didn't have time to get ready. I was already too late. And yeah. All right, another thing you can do, and all of this is for effect. Keep that in mind, right? You can very well work with your basics. You can work with your full stop and your comma, and you can achieve a lot with that, right? And so you may not need the colon or the semicolon or other stuff. But if you want to, like, each punctuation has its effect in a sentence, right? You can write a sentence multiple ways, possibly even using different punctuation marks for the same sentence, right? So there might be a situation where you would have the option between using either a dash, which will come to, or a comma, right? Or something else, right? And it really depends on what effect you want to give, how you want your writing to appear, and how you want the reader to feel about when you're writing. And some effects, so some punctuations are, you know, they appear more dramatic, they have more impact in what they do as compared to others, right? And so again, it depends on what you want the reader to feel when they're going through your writing. Okay. And so this third one is an example of whether or not you want to use punctuation, right? So you can either play with sentence structure or you can use punctuation. It's up to you, right, to form a particular sentence. And so what we're going to do with the comma right now is emphasize an important point. Right, an example for this is correct, and so that's one thing, right? You're emphasizing that it's her cat that she loves the most. And so this has a particular effect, right? You're bringing her cat at the end, you're putting the colon, and so that's really highlighting that particular part of the sentence. But you could very well write the sentence a different way, right? Achieving the same meaning at least, perhaps not the effect. Keep in mind, meaning and effect are two different things, and that's something that you need to work with in the comprehension. So, right, and so the meaning of the sentence, right, and the one I'm going to write will be the same. The effect, however, will be different. Right, I could very well write this as she now, just like you could tell me in the chat if you want, if you think there's any difference in the meaning. I don't think there is, right? It's the same thing, but it's just not as dramatic, so to speak, right? And so when you're doing your narratives or any other writing, that's something that will come in handy. Okay, we're done with the colon. The next up is the semicolon, right? Which is a fun and tricky punctuation to use, right? Something that if I would say, honestly, I'm not quite well versed with myself, right? I just try to use it, maybe uh, a hit or miss in my case. And so what we have with the semicolon, right? One is, right? So it's used to join independent clauses that are similar yet different. Now, what in the world does that mean? Right? And again, over here, the example I give that I'll be giving you, I can show you a different way of writing it, right? And it all comes back to the effect. So, for example, you're talking about someone's uh, choice of food, right? And you can write All right, so Jack likes Italian, Jill prefers Chinese, full stop at the end. Now, why did I use a semicolon over here? So how are they similar? Well, they're similar because as you can see, we're talking for both these people, we're talking about their preference in food. How are they different? Because their preference in food is different. Right now, this is a very simple example of where a semicolon can be used, right? There are other situations where a semicolon can be used, obviously, given the same independent clauses that are similar yet different. What I want to show you again, right, is you can turn this into a compound sentence, right? You can write and it's the same thing, right? And so if you want to show off your punctuation, maybe you'd use a semicolon if you're confident that you're doing it properly, right? Otherwise, yeah, compound sentence also works, right? So, and there's another effect that is kind of like vague, right? I saw this in a TED Ed video. So if you want, I can share the link. There's an entire video about using the semicolon. And it's about that, you're putting a pause in between, but you're not ending the sentence, you're still continuing it. So it's like somewhere between a comma and a full stop. Right? So that's something. What else can a semicolon be used for? Uh, yeah, that's it. Okay. Then we have, all right, so we are done with that and that and that and that and that. And oh, nice. We're done with 6 of these. Next, coming to the M dash, N dash, and hyphen. The M dash. So what does the M dash do? Okay, so it's, for one thing, it's written a bit long, right? Maybe a bit less than that, I guess, right? Like that. And you leave one letter space, like you would using your space bar on the keyboard on either side. Now, what meaning does it give? Well, just like the comma, right? It separates information in the sentence. And that means that you're going to have certain situations where you would choose between using a comma or using an M dash. And you can see visually the M dash is more striking. You can see there's a dash on the page as opposed to a comma, which is more common, right? So an example that we have for this one. Right, and so you have that sentence, right? So you're here in Karachi, at least I am, right? And so my best friend, Dash, whom I've known since childhood, is moving to Lahore. And without rewriting it, I can obviously tell you, and you can, understand that as well, that you can very well put commas over here, just like we talked about when we started class, right? The new teacher, although experienced, right? So just separating information, you can put a comma over here, it just won't be as obvious, right? And so again, it depends on the effect you want to give. Then, oops, okay. You have, right, showing emphasis, right? And that's something we did for the column. Now, that doesn't mean that you can switch around the punctuations all the time. Okay, you have to know whether one punctuation can fit instead of the other. It is possible many a times, but not always. Okay, so I'm not saying that you can replace the dash with a comma every time, or you can replace the dash with a colon every time, right? For example, right, we have over here giving emphasis. That's something you did for the colon. But in the example I'm going to show you, the colon won't work as well, or it won't work at all, actually. It's not a capital H. And so over here, right, you'd say, well, there's a but and you put a comma. And if you put a comma over here, then you lose the emphasis, right? So that's what will end up happening, right? You won't have the emphasis if you replace the dash with a comma. And if you replace the dash with a colon, it just won't work. Okay? It just won't work. It's not about what meaning it won't work. So again, right, what effect do you want to give? These punctuations add effect, they have their meaning, they have their utility. And so learning how to work with them will improve your writing, obviously. Okay. If there's any question, put it in the chat, right? I'll obviously try to attend to it. The next we have the en dash. Do we have time? We have time. Okay, the en dash is simpler. Not to say that it is complicated, the en dash. Right? And right, it has 2 to 3 functions, if I'm not mistaken. 2, yes. Achha, the way it's written is that it's shorter than, right? It's shorter than the em dash, right? And you don't leave any space, no space left on either side. So when you're writing it, right, whatever you're writing before and after the dash is right next to it. So one use for it is to indicate a range. Right? For example, in numbers, dates, something like that. And so World War II, and then I'm putting in 1939 to 1945, right? And so that is obviously what we're looking at. That is the en dash, right? And this is a range, the range of years. All right, so World War II, 1939 to 1945, changed the global geopolitical landscape. The other thing this particular dash does is it indicates a connection. So are people going to watch the Pakistan-India match in Dubai? If I'm not mistaken, I actually have no idea what's going on. Right? I'm just assuming it's going to happen in Dubai. When is the Karachi Dubai, right, scheduled to start? Right, and so this is showing a connection between the fact that the flight is moving from Karachi to Dubai. All right. Then we have the hyphen. By the way, I'm doing this based on my experience that I felt students need to know all this stuff to improve their overall English and grammar and writing and all of that. And I honestly do hope that you're finding it useful. I also know that you're all, waiting for me to get to the past papers, and we'll be doing that soon. Okay, because we'll be coming, along with doing the past paper, we won't be just solving them. We'll be, practicing our skills, the reading skills, right? Identifying information and separating details from the main point and all that. The reading skills that I have listed in the earlier classes. Okay, so the hyphen is short, so it's shorter than, right, even the n dash, the one we just did, right, and it is used to, right, with compound nouns, compound adjectives, and compound numbers, right? So it's used with compound nouns. What are those? Well, for example, compound nouns are nouns that are made up of more than one word, but the whole thing counts as one. So, for example, all right, so my sister-in-law works as a pastry chef. A sister-in-law is actually three words, but it's treated as one compound noun, so it's actually one, right? So three in one. And same thing, you got compound adjectives. So, right, adjectives that are made up of more than one word. And as far as the compound noun thing is concerned, there are some words that can be written with or without the hyphen, and that's that's a little trick that can come in handy when you're working with your summary, right? So if you're going of maybe two or three words over the limit and you want to shorten it, maybe I'm not saying you definitely can, because it depends on what you've written, but maybe you can find two nouns that you've written that you can connect with the hyphen, and so that would change two words into one word, right? And that's awesome. So you're just like, you're within the word limit now, or almost at least. Okay. Right, the well-known author met his fans. So the author is the subject, is the noun. Well-known is an adjective, right? And who did we just lose? We lost survival. Okay. Okay, and so that is the example of the compound adjective. And the third thing, right? And also something that you can use in your summary and your writings overall are compound numbers. So if you're writing out the number in spelling, right? And so basically what you have is, right, it starts from 21. So it's written like this all the way, and as you can see, I'm indicating a range, so I'm maybe make that dash shorter, right, to 29, right, and then 31 to 39, and right, 91 to 99, and then repeat when you get into the hundreds, right? So 121 and so on. And so when you're writing these numbers in like spelling, so you put a hyphen in between those, and so that counts as one word. All right, what do we have after the hyphen in the list? I don't have this memorized. we have the apostrophe, right? I believe we can manage the apostrophe. So that's done, that's done, that's done. Okay, the apostrophe. Right, and so the apostrophe we know is, right, to show possession. So, okay, so the apostrophe S, right? This, so it's showing possession. Then we have used with contractions. So when you're shortening two words into one, and so you can say Yusuf said he'll be late, right? And so this was actually, as you know, he will, right? And so you've made that shorter. You've made, and you put an apostrophe to show that some words have, some letters have been kind of cut out. Okay. And yeah, I think we can manage the quotations, the double quotation marks. These ones. And these are used to show a quoted passage. So if you're quoting something from a text, or if you're quoting something that another person said, and so what you want to do in that case, the rules for direct speech is that you quote it. Quote means saying it word to word as it was. So as it was written in the text, or as the person said it, right? So quoted, I'm going to say text or speech. And the example for that would be, hmm, so George Orwell wrote, and we have the comma and then the quotation marks, right? And this is a quote from his book, Animal Farm, if any of you are familiar with that. If not, you definitely should take a read, right? Because it's really good and it has very strong messages about how humans are. And you can very well relate that to what's going around in the world today. Right, and so I'm writing the word pigs because pigs are, the one of the main characters in the book. Oh wait, sorry, I'm misquoting this. It's not pigs, it's animals. So all, can I fit it in? Yes, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Right, and so this, I'm using this word for word, right? I'm taking it from the text, and so, right, the name of the book is Animal Farm by George Orwell. Okay. You can easily find it in PDF form, right? You can Animal Farm, FARM. I've written it on the board. And there's a website called Global Grey Books, which has good quality PDFs of all, the uh, public domain books. Well, not all, but many of the classics that are in the public domain that don't have any copyright on them anymore. So you can go to that website, you can search it, and you get your, this one and many others, right? So 1984 is also, and that's the name of the book, 1984 in numbers. That's also a very famous book and also tells about how the world works. Okay, just to wrap up, the last thing about the right is dialogue. So, if you're doing like a separate thing with a dialogue, if you're adding dialogues, which is slightly different from quoting what someone said, this is like, a back and forth between two people. Okay, so dialogue is a bit different from what you call it, quoting what a person said, and obviously quoting text. And I'm going to stop there, and we're almost done with the punctuations. We're definitely going to complete our next class, which will be next Wednesday, because I won't be taking a class on Friday. I already informed you about that. And I'll be uploading the lecture. If there's anything you want to ask, right, the meeting's about to end. And so you can ask me on the WhatsApp group, and I'll try to respond to you as soon as possible and try to help out as best as I can. Okay. So keep up with your prep, and all the best.